executive orders and the force of ICE or, a lot of our what was traditionally border security type stuff, law enforcement to deport people who are in America, not citizens, but perhaps never have committed a crime. They can now be detained and deported for protesting against Israel. And the GOP and a lot of politicians like John Fetterman, they're framing it as if they're just getting rid of terrorists and terrorist supporters. But there's something that a lot of people are missing because it is such a heavy topic when it comes to war. And a lot of people watch programs like Fox News, et cetera, that have filled their brain with propaganda for the last 3 decades where they can't fathom this. But I'm here to tell you why this is really not only dangerous president, but a new president in America that will probably be fought in courts over the next couple of decades, regardless of what you think about it or regardless of who you want to stay in America or not. I hope people listen to this live stream and consider what I'm saying, because I think there's a lot of angles and points that they're missing. And of course, like over the last 20, 30 years, eventually they just start calling their own citizens terrorists like they did to Tulsi Gabbard, which I'm going to get into at first. Tulsi Gabbard, who is now the director of national intelligence, she was put on a terrorist watch list for trying to tell people for a decade that the United States was funding terrorist organizations. So now, according to the government just a couple years ago, Tulsi Gabbard is a terrorist potentially because she disagrees with our foreign policy. Obviously, this is where it's going. Obviously, they're starting with people that it's easier to start with first, but a lot of people are missing this topic, and I can't say I'm surprised. So I'm going to try to stay calm, be reasonable. I'm going to tell you guys everything that I know about it and that I want to talk about. Dream Rare podcast starts now, and perhaps later this week, I'll do an even deeper dive showing dozens of articles and clips and such. But for today, for lack of a better term, I'm freeballing it. But everything that I'm saying, please feel free to look it up and consider. Dream Rare podcast starts now.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on Facebook? What's going on YouTube? What's going on Twitter? Someone said, talk about Timber Sycamore. Isn't that the operation where the United States was literally funding terrorist organizations in Syria? I think it was. Let's see. Someone said my stock portfolio is getting crushed. Yeah, everybody's is, Kirk. We can maybe talk about that at the end. Shifty Eyes said, don't notice and protest if you're on a visa. Definitely something to consider. I hear what you're saying. And I tend to agree. If you're in America on a visa, I don't think you should be the biggest activist. Like, you're not even really a citizen. So while I understand how people are feeling, I really just want to get into this topic because what did you think your undershirt? I don't know what you guys are talking about, but I'm going to focus. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if everything looks good and sounds good, if the connection is good. I'm going to go off and I'll read some comments at the end, but I really have a lot to say about this. And I pray that people just kind of consider what I'm saying. I feel like I'm competing with a multi-trillion-dollar propaganda machine. I'm competing with trillions upon trillions of dollars and dozens of decades, maybe not dozens of decades, but several decades, multiple decades worth, maybe a half century worth of propaganda. And most Republican pages are not thinking about this. So it's going to be a tough topic to talk about because I feel like I'm going against the grain. It's not because I'm wrong. It's not because I don't know what I'm talking about. It's because so many people are so simple-minded, which is why, just to give you guys a quick preface, like 90% of influencers and podcasters and news hosts got COVID-19 wrong. They were months behind, years behind. And they weren't just months and years behind because they made mistakes. And this is an important point I think people need to realize. Like, I can't speak for everybody, but I don't take money from anybody. I'm not reliant on anybody. I'm like a media version of Thomas Massey, right? Thomas Massey is an honorable person. He doesn't take donor money, and he's able to speak the truth. There's a reason that Thomas Massey's usually right. He's voting against speech rules. He was right on COVID-19, and all of the rest of Congress are wrong. There's not a lot of thinkers out there, but also a lot of these people are constrained by their positions and their jobs. So I know people like to look at someone like a Tom Cotton on television or a Mark Levin or whoever, and they're like, oh, they just made a mistake. You could think that, and you're entitled to, because, only God knows, or perhaps you do as well. But it's really not the case. Like, there's a reason nobody at Fox News will tell you what I'm about to tell you. There's a reason that you can't get a job at Newsmax, most likely, if you talk about what I'm going to, like, everybody's put in line to push a certain narrative. And the second you get too far out of line, like a Tucker Carlson, they pluck you out and they replace you with a Jesse Waters, right? Jesse Waters is a likable guy. He seems like, I'm sure we'd be friends. He follows me on Twitter. I'm surprised. So he must like my content. But in general, no disrespect to him, but it's like, you know, he knows the constraints of Fox News. And there's a reason nobody knows about this. And it's not because mysteriously, you know, every news host made a mistake. They're incentivized to make mistakes, and you get punished for speaking the truth, especially about this topic. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to ignore the brainwashed people on Facebook and the great people on Facebook who are not brainwashed, but let's get right into it without being too annoying. Tulsi Gabbard is a great example that I want to start with. In 2017, I think, or perhaps one of those years, 2017, 2018, Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul came up with something called the Stop Arming Terrorists Act. They had come to the conclusion that the United States and our allies, but especially our taxpayer money, was funding literal terrorists, right? This is important because everybody's saying for these little executive orders that Trump's passing, oh, they're just getting rid of terrorists. They're just getting rid of terrorist sympathizer. First of all, what do you think the word terrorist means? And second of all, what does the word terrorist mean? And third of all, is the United States government going to apply this to all terrorists or terrorist sympathizers? It's a really tough line to push because the United States funds literal terrorist organizations. So when Tulsi Gabbard figured out that the United States was actually giving money to rebel groups in Syria, which have now taken over Syria and they're killing Christians, and now everyone's freaking out. But we all knew this foreign policy was going to lead there. Tulsi Gabbard talked about it. Rand Paul talked about it. And they said, hey, Congress, since you're so against terrorists, why don't you sign this bill called the Stop Arming Terrorists Act? Let's stop arming the terrorists that you claim to fight on the television. The bill didn't pass. The United States Congress, the United States government, pretty much both parties. I mean, Trump, to his credit, him and Pompeo, to Pompeo's credit, although I'm not a big fan of Pompeo, they did cut a multi-billion-dollar funding program to the rebel groups in Syria through the CIA. And Tulsi Gabbard was a fan of that. That's probably one of the reasons she went over to the Trump side. However, Tulsi Gabbard got put on a terrorist watch list under the Biden administration by the deep state. Why did Tulsi Gabbard get put on a terrorist watch list, right? It's a little scary. It's because, in my opinion, she noticed that the U.S. government was funding terrorists. So they invert reality. Even though they're the ones funding and arming rebel groups, so it's really just terrorist organizations and extremists, they're not terrorists for funding the terrorists. You're the terrorist for noting that they funded the terrorists. You know, Tulsi Gabbard's the terror watch because she talked to Bashar al-Assad, who they're trying to kill and overthrow, who they successfully overthrew, and now it's a mess. You know, she's a terrorist because she disagrees with Ukraine and Zelensky. So when the U.S. funds organizations that are terrorists, or let's say in Ukraine, there was an organization called the Azov Battalion, who Facebook and all of social media said was a neo-Nazi organization before the war. They said you couldn't post Azov Battalion gear because that's basically supporting neo-Nazi organizations, and that's against our terms of policy. Once the war started and the American taxpayer dollars started funding billions upon billions of dollars to Ukraine, and Ukraine was utilizing in some form the Azov Battalion, Facebook actually rescinded its policy and said, you know what? Remember when we told you that the Azov Battalion was a neo-Nazi organization? Well, now, you know, we're going to let you post about them because our taxpayer dollars are funding them and we support them against Russia. So you have to understand, in Ukraine, we're funding groups directly or indirectly that Facebook once said was illegal to align yourself with. Now they're allowing you to align yourself with because the United States are funding who they once called the neo-Nazis. In Syria, the rebel groups that are taking over were funded directly or indirectly by Israel and America. You can find multiple mainstream articles about this now. When I grew up, this was a conspiracy theory, like, oh, that's crazy to say that we would do that. But now it's all out there. It's in mainstream publication. It's declassified. Foreign leaders and domestic leaders have admitted to doing so. But nobody cares. Nobody even seems to notice that. It's like, no, yeah, that's just a small detail. It's not really a small detail. And the irony of this situation, if you could even call it irony, is people like Mark Levin, who are neocons who wanted to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, and all of these neocons and ultra-Zionists who wanted to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, while people like myself, Tulsi Gabbard, Candace Owens, and others were like, if you overthrow Bashar al-Assad, you know, people are going to die. It's going to be bad for everybody in the region. Well, of course, it's not bad for Israel because them and Turkey are going to take the land. But in general, it's like for everybody else, it's not going to be great. The same people that wanted this to happen, now they're like, why isn't Candace Owens talking about it? It's like, Tulsi, Candace Owens, myself, millions of others, we all were from 2017 on. I can't speak for Candace because I have no idea how long she talked about it, but myself, Tulsi Gabbard, we've been making reports about this since 2017, saying the deep state, the uniparty, is trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, and Bashar al-Assad is protecting Christians. Now that he's gone, they're getting slaughtered. And the same people who wanted him gone are inverting reality and trying to trick their audience into thinking it's the other people who wanted this to happen, when it's their foreign policy that led to it to happen. So the reason I'm starting with this before I talk about it, and it's really crazy to me that people have not figured this out since the George Bush era, because nothing's really changed. In George Bush's era, they said, if you disagree with the war, you're a terrorist sympathizer. If you don't want to go after, first it was bin Laden, then it ended up being Saddam Hussein, then it ended up being Muammar Gaddafi, then it ended up being Bashar al-Assad. The goalpost kept moving because their goal was always to do what's in the background, but they needed justification to do it. And once they got the justification to do it, they just started doing all these things and tricking on the TV. But they used to tell me in the 2000s, because I was like, listen, I love America, but I don't believe George Bush, and I think the war on terror is a scam. Like, I knew this when I was 15, 14. Literally every person around me was like, you're crazy, you're insane. And I was like, I'm watching documentaries on this. I'm doing research. Like, I was never insane. I just didn't watch television. I was like, it's all right there. Now it's even more right there. Like, it's even more obvious. But when I was in my teens, literally every person was like, you are a terrorist if you don't support George Bush. You are a terrorist if you don't want to go after all these foreign leaders. You're a terrorist. Now Trump came around and he's normalized disagreeing with the war establishment. But my whole life, they called you a terrorist if you knew that the United States was working with terrorists or lying about terrorists to create terror overseas. I love America. I'm an unapologetic American. But I don't lack self-awareness to like, oh yeah, everybody else is the terrorist and we're just the good guys beating up the terrorists. If you're still believing that, most people don't, but on Facebook, like, the boomers are just, no offense, like the most brainwashed population in modern history. Someone needs to make a documentary on how brainwashed boomers are. All the Republican boomers, I love you guys. You're my favorites, but they still believe this George Bush era propaganda. They're like, you don't understand, Anomaly. We're just going to deport the terrorists. We're going to deport the terrorists. You can use AI for research now, or Google, but it's like AI works even better. I used AI, which I've used the Twitter one. They're definitely not anti-Israel in any way. I would say, if anything, they have a pro-Israel bias on Grok, and Elon is very kind to Israelis and the Israel national policy. I asked Grok, I said, did Bibi Netanyahu directly or indirectly prop up Hamas? And Grok told me yes, that Netanyahu did prop up Hamas, that Netanyahu did, want them to gain or stay in power to make the two-state solution impossible. Like, this is all on Grok. Don't blame me. Go use Grok for yourself. I'm sure if this gets out there enough, they'll probably make Elon Musk go on another apology tour, and then he'll probably have to rig his algorithm or something. But in general, it's like, you could look up mainstream Israeli articles that say that he was responsible in some form for forcing an election on them. He wanted them there. And, there was an article just a couple of days ago. I don't know if it was Haaretz or Times of Israel, but just a couple of days ago, there was an article that said that he was working with Qatar to essentially prop them up. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not hallucinating this. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is mainstream Israeli publication is publishing this stuff, saying he worked with Qatar to prop this organization up. So is he not going to be allowed to come to America now? Because I don't know if he has an American passport or not. Like, it's only students who are protesting on a visa that will get deported for being a sympathizer of a terrorist organization, but not somebody who essentially propped them up. Not our taxpayer dollars that are essentially funding terror organizations in Syria, or at least at one point were, to overthrow the leader. And now people are getting slaughtered. This is our foreign policy. Like, I hate to say it because I like this country so much, but everywhere we go, we destroy. Just like our country's getting destroyed from within, just like our country's gotten less safe and people notice that it's getting crappier, just like our country's infrastructure is awful. Our airports are not even top 20 in the world. Like, everybody noticed that America, for being such a great nation, isn't that great anymore. Yet they can't seem to realize, like, oh, this country sucks, but it's just the left. It's like, our foreign policy is doing this all over the world. We go to Ukraine, they get gayer, they get more liberal, they're not having elections anymore. Okay, now they're turning into San Francisco. I guess that helps them or something. We go to the Middle East. We're like, oh, Bashar al-Assad, there's a leader that we can't control that works with countries who don't want him to. Why don't we fund terrorist groups in order to overthrow him? And then that happens. And then the same people who did it are like, oh, Christians are dying and nobody's talking about it. I thought you guys just like Christians. You're anti-Semites. It's like, it's the foreign policy of America and Israel that led to the power vacuum that's there now. I wouldn't be shocked if that terrorist organizer, whatever his name is, who's taking over the country, he's probably CIA or, roughly affiliated with the intelligence communities, because they're letting him go to the EU, or there's some sort of European or global conference. And they're like, we're going to allow this guy to come. A couple of years ago, they would have told you he was a terrorist leader. But now, because he's playing ball with America and he took out Bashar al-Assad, they don't care how many people die in Syria, as long as they don't have Bashar al-Assad meddling in their foreign policy. So to make a long intro purposely, not by mistake, you have to understand that the United States has funded terrorist organizations. If you're so concerned with people supporting terrorist organizations getting deported, most of Congress would be deported. Most former presidents would get deported. Most of the people in the intelligence communities and serving as the State Department would get deported. Of course, not if they had a green card, but you understand what I'm saying. I'm just gonna say it bluntly, and I don't care if it comes off condescending. You're an idiot if you think the Trump administration's just going after people who support terrorists, because your taxpayer dollars support terrorists, your allies support terrorists, and there's mainstream articles saying that they propped up the terrorist organizations that you think you're fighting now, when in reality they probably propped them up to knock them down like a pin to steal the land, because that's always been what's going on. And by the way, I've tried to stay away from the word genocide, because I think people exaggerate on all sides. Everyone's like, you're genociding this, you're genocide. Like, everybody exaggerates all the time. So I don't use the word genocide. With that being said, if you look at a population of 2 million people and you say they all deserve to die because they voted one way 15 years ago, you probably want to genocide them, because it's like, it would be like you saying that you wanted to wipe Ukraine off the map because Zelensky was there. I would never say that. I would say most of the people in Ukraine are innocent, even if 70% of people voted for Zelensky. They didn't, but let's just say 80% of Ukraine voted for Zelensky, or 95%. I still wouldn't say to wipe them off the map because they did that. Yet you have mainstream people in the GOP and in the Democratic Party, by the way, saying just wipe out 2 million people, just wipe them all out, wipe out all the women and children because they voted for Hamas. That's a terrorist organization. 15 years ago, 20 years, when was the last election? When we have articles saying that the guy who must not be named propped them up purposely to knock them down. But that's okay. Just kill out. Like that's literally people's logic. So it's like, I know people think that it's just the left saying this stuff because the left is crazy and they lie all the time. And I understand they do exaggerate. But if you literally think you could wipe out millions of people because they voted one way, you are actually trying to genocide them. And I would say, I've avoided this word for a long time now. All evidence is pointing towards they are trying to genocide them. They're trying to dehumanize the whole population, basically do every single thing that they accuse other people of doing to that population, and just slaughter them all and steal the land. And I have a hard time with the research that I've done thinking that this wasn't the plan all along. I know this was the plan all along. I knew this 5-6 years ago before all this stuff started breaking out, because I read research and I don't watch Fox News, Newsmax, Charlie Kirk, or Ben Shapiro to brainwash me and turn me into a mental midget. So I've already known this, but I mean, it's escalating quite severely. With all this being said, I'm an American citizen, and I'm telling you right now, the Trump administration is not going to crack down on the people that are actually working with terrorists, because it's the United States government a lot of the times. They're going to basically say that everybody who disagrees with Israel is a terrorist. Everybody who doesn't agree with them slaughtering tens of thousands of people, you must be the terrorist, not them killing tens of thousands of people. It's you for disagreeing with it on any form. If you disagree with it, you hate them, not you just don't like what's going on. You must just hate them. You must just be a terrorist. That's what they're going to do. That's what they are doing. Trump said in his statement, if you're anti-Semitic, I'm trying to think of the word, pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, or anti-American. Once again, I don't have to get into the pro-terrorist stuff because so many people in government have literally funded terrorist groups. Okay, but they're not held accountable for that. But if you protest the wrong way, you're a terrorist now. Got it. What about anti-Semitic? What does the word anti-Semitic mean? Go look up the IHRA definition. It means if you say that the people that must not be named own banks, you're an anti-Semite. If you say they control media companies, you're an anti-Semite. If you say they fund politicians, which even Sean McGuire admitted on his Twitter the other day, he said, George Soros funds the left and the Adelson family funds the right. He's like, see, it's capitalist and socialist. It's good and bad. It's like, it's not, he thinks he's making some sort of point saying, oh, all the people are so hateful because they don't realize that there's people of this ethnicity funding both sides. He doesn't realize he's making the same point that all the people he's mad at are making. Like, yeah, no, that is the point. The point is George Soros funds the left and nobody likes it. But also the Adelson family gives hundreds of millions of dollars to the Republican Party. And to me, that's not like, oh, it's funding both sides. It's awesome. You win some, you lose some. No, they're funding the Republican Party to get stuff done for Israel. Trump gets on a stage and he said that they come into the White House more than anybody else comes into the White House, more than any single person comes in besides people who work there. And they're always asking for Israel, stuff for Israel. And Trump says no matter what he does, they just want more for Israel. Okay. But if you say that now, that's anti-Semitism according to the hate speech law. So you're not allowed to say they fund both sides, even though it's true. You're not allowed to say they own banks, which is not true to everybody, but it's like saying you can't say black people are crushing at basketball. Well, not all black people are crushing at basketball. A majority of them aren't, but also, statistically in the NBA, they're doing well on average. I don't know. Can't say that. Oh, no, sorry, guys. We live in the United States of Israel. America. Israel. America. Who knows what country this is anymore because we don't have a country. We've been conquered. We've been taken over, and it's called hate speech when you notice that we have been. But, I guess in this country now, we just can't talk about anything. There's one race, one religion, and one country we can't talk about, we can't protest, we can't disagree with. Even if our taxpayer dollars go to funding terrorist organizations, it's not their fault. It's your fault for noticing. You're the terrorist for noticing that our government has literally funded terrorist organizations and they destroyed Syria and now people are going to get slaughtered. Do you notice a pattern? Everywhere they go, people just get slaughtered. It's like, oh, we messed up Libya. People are dying now. Oh, Syria was pretty cool before and now it's not. Oh my gosh, I wonder how that happened. Yeah, I wonder how. We funded the rebel groups. The rebel groups are the terrorists. Now they've taken over. And the rebel terrorist extremists that they warn you about on Fox News just forgets the part to tell you that your taxpayer dollars are actually funding that. That's the one part that they miss on Fox News. You're like, oh, terrorists, Hamas, oh! You're like freaking out. Oh, yeah, to ban them, deport them. Dumbasses, boomers, wake up, stupids. Your taxpayer dollars are funding those groups. You don't even realize it. Oh, God, it's them. Who do you think put them in power, idiot? Who do you think gave them the money to take over, idiot? Who do you think slaughtering the Christians? Idiots. It's the extremist Muslims, the ones that the United States bankrolled. Idiots. To give you the interpretation that this is how it all is, so then they can go in and steal the land and take their resources. Idiots. My gosh, it's like I'm stuck in 2001. I thought, excuse my language, but I thought people got smarter now. I thought people were aware of all this stuff. I thought we were based and on the It's like these people have learned nothing. So without getting too much into it, that's my intro to this video. Long-winded but necessary. The U.S. has indirectly and directly funded rebel groups who are the actual literal terrorists. And you could find articles from this week and last week saying that our allies literally propped up Hamas, or some of our allies propped up Hamas and even worked with Qatar to keep them. Just close your eyes on that and just, throw out anybody. No, these are not executive orders and bills to get rid of terrorists in our country. These are executive orders and bills to stop anybody from talking about Israel, criticizing Israel, protesting Israel, noticing that our taxpayer dollars are funding Israel. That's what these laws are. It's not for everybody. What if they deported all Russians who were sympathetic to Russia over Ukraine? Or like nowhere else in the country would this happen. Only for Israel. Everything. Only for Israel. Your taxpayer dollars for Israel. Speech laws for Israel. But if you notice, you're just anti-Semitic. You're just so hateful. Biggest donor on the left. Biggest donor on the right. It's good for you, though. Don't notice. Don't disagree. It's awesome, right? Isn't your country awesome? No. We're probably 20 years away from being Syria here at this rate of degeneracy and just pure moral failure. But that's okay, right? Because the stock market's up. Oh, wait, no, it's crashing into the ground because Trump just keeps putting tariffs and starting these trade wars. But it's whatever. It is what it is. And I'm sure it'll go back up eventually and he'll take credit. But, it's whatever. With all that being said, now becomes the legal president and the moral president. Should you deport foreigners who break a law? Sure, I'm fine with that. Break a law, go home. I don't care. Don't care what it's for. But here's the thing. What if somebody protests Israel, but they're not committing any crime and they're legally in America? Here's a question that people haven't thought of. Some people have, some people haven't. Should ICE be using their resources to go after legal people in America who have not committed a crime, who may not be a citizen, but they are here legally and they haven't committed a crime? Should ICE's resources go towards harassing them and trying to throw them out of the country? Few things about that. One, ICE is not going to deport every illegal. They're moving slowly. There's millions upon tens of millions of illegals in this country. And no matter how fast they go, they're not going to deport every illegal in this country. By the time Trump's out of office, there's still going to be millions upon millions of illegal immigrants in this country. Now they're taking even more resources away from deporting illegal immigrants to going after legal people who are in this country who haven't committed a crime, because the real crime is protesting Israel. If you commit a crime at a protest and do something illegal, I don't care if you go home. But call me crazy when it comes to the First Amendment and when it comes to America, it's got to be for everything or nothing. It's got to be any sort of protest, any sort of crime, any sort of, if you protest in America, you go home. So now are people here in America on visas like slaves? Like I understand they're not going to get every privilege that a citizen gets, but like, let's just say that a person's here on a visa and they want to protest the Democratic Party. Would you let them? Most people would be like, yeah, let them protest the Democrats. Well, that's a protest. What about if they were protesting seed oils? They were against seed oils and they were for healthier food. Should we deport someone here with a green card in college because they're trying to take part in a organic, holistic protest? Like, where do you draw the line? So this is why it's a slippery slope. They're only going to do it for Israel. So there is really no slippery slope because they're not going to do it for any other country. It's for Israel. Our whole country's for Israel. Our taxpayer dollars go for Israel. Our speech laws go for Israel. Both parties prioritize Israel. Our country is essentially the United States of Israel. It's just what it is. I mean, I'm not even upset at it at this point. I've known this for 5, 6, 7 years now, and I've just been smeared as an anti-Semite because I know the truth. But we are the United States of Israel. We have no sovereignty. Our country is totally compromised and conquered. The Republican Party is just like wildly upset. Like they can't do anything without doing everything for Israel. They can't even deport illegals without doing stuff for Israel. RFK can't even fix the health department without making this first thing for Israel. Our whole country runs for Israel. We are Israel. That's just what it is. The same way like Ukraine thinks it's like a different country. They're like, this is what we want. Ukraine is a puppet state of the United States of America. Like we control that country essentially. You understand what I'm saying? It's like they think they elected Zelensky and they want this or that. We funded and bankrolled a revolution in the country to kick out a leader and then figured out how to get a puppet in there somehow. Could have been multiple countries involved, but it's like if you live in Ukraine, you're basically like a puppet state of America. And America is a puppet state of Israel. The same way that Ukraine is basically ours, like we're basically theirs. And I'm sorry if this comes across as hate speech or anti-Semitism. I'm sorry that the truth is now hate speech. I'm sorry that the truth now offends people. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we live in the United States of not the country I grew up in, and we've been completely conquered. So there has to be speech laws for the country that owns us. I get it. It's the same way in England. You can't criticize the king. In Saudi Arabia, you can't criticize the royalty. In America, it's Israel. They control us. That's the truth. I've known it for 5, 6 years. I've tried to tap dance around it because I'm, I wouldn't say afraid, but I'm just very aware of who runs this country, who runs everything, and who can destroy your career at any second, and who tries to desperately at every sense of the way. But at this point, it's just so obvious. Can we just be real about it? Even if you're the most pro-Israel Zionist in the world, can we just be honest about it? We don't have a country. We're a puppet state. We've been conquered. So it is what it is. So these laws, they're not to stop illegal protests. Illegal protests are illegal. You don't need a special law or bill to stop something that's illegal. That means that it literally already is illegal and the police can get involved. Police are allowed to get involved at universities too if there's a crime being committed. So that's not what it's for. It's for Israel. And then people say, well, they're just hating on these and that people. So are you suggesting that if somebody disagrees with Israel, that every single person of that ethnicity has to be on board with Israel? If that's the truth, that their religion or their race makes them on board with a foreign country, does that mean they have dual loyalty? If it does mean that they have dual loyalty, because you're demanding that they do have dual loyalty, How come there's a speech law being passed through Congress, executive order, everywhere, saying that you can't say what I just said, even though that's what you're saying? You see, this all breaks down with even a little bit of scrutiny because none of it makes sense at all. A lot of the protesters that are protesting against Israel are Jewish. A lot of them are Jewish. Some of them are not, but there's a lot of left-wing anti-Zionist Jewish people. Are they terrorists? Do they hate? Do they have to like Israel? If you're Jewish, you have to like Israel. Why would an American citizen have to like a foreign country? I'm Italian. Do I have to have loyalty to Italy? No, I came to America. I have loyalty to America. I have sole loyalty to America, not to Poland, not to Italy, to America. Yet for one race and one religion, you're demanding that they must have loyalty to a foreign country, or else they're self-hating, or else they're a terrorist, or else what? They need to? Okay, let's just say they all need to. They all need to like that country as much as America because we're conjoined at the hip. Okay, then take away the speech law that says that it's anti-Semitism to say that they have to like that country, because you can't have both. You can't have a speech law that says you can't say what you're demanding of these people. It makes absolutely no sense. Dave Smith comes along. They hate him because he doesn't have loyalty to Israel. They want him to have loyalty to Israel, but they don't want anyone to notice that anyone has loyalty to them. So they pass a speech law that says that. I mean, it's just so obvious. On the front of it, I don't particularly care if a foreigner gets deported for committing a crime. I think every foreigner who commits a crime should get deported, for lack of a better term. Don't come to this country committing crimes. If I committed a crime in Russia or Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't care if they deported me back to America. It's where I'm from anyway. I'd be happy they deported me rather than tried to put me on trial. Like, a deportation is actually like a good thing if you actually committed an actual crime. Like, if I was in Saudi Arabia and I did something by mistake, I would hope they sent me back. It's like, dude, I don't want to go to a Saudi Arabian court. Are you kidding me? So I don't care if people commit a crime, they can get deported. But that's not what this executive order is. That's not what these bills are. And that's not what they're doing. They're not just deporting anyone who committed a crime, because if you deported anyone who committed a crime, you would say that. Not anyone who did it for one topic. But this isn't even about just a crime. They're saying that for a foreigner, it's now a crime to protest Israel. Even if you don't break into a classroom, even if you don't do something illegal, you're committing anti-Semitism. That means you have to be obsessed with Israel, or else you're an anti-Semite. You can't notice patterns in banking or media, or else you're an anti-Semite. You can't notice that some of the biggest donors on both sides of politics are a certain ethnicity, or else you're an anti-Semite. You can't figure out that one of the biggest donors of the GOP over the last decade, the Adelson family, they do things for Israel. They want things for Israel. They pay off Trump to do things for Israel. America, we're second fiddle. Trump said this. I don't have to make up a thing. Trump said on stage, they ask for more favors than anybody, and they come to the White House more than anybody, and they demand that he does more and more and more for Israel, even though Trump's like breaking his back doing things for them. They always want more. That's what Trump said. But that's anti-Semitism if you say it, because you're a peasant. Because you're not allowed to say it, because Trump's allowed to say it because he donates and gives money. And this is kind of like the purity test. It's like when Elon Musk does everything that people want, then it's okay that he does certain things. But it's like, as long as you're doing stuff for us, as long as you're giving money to us, as long as you're doing that, then you can do that. But the second that you stop playing ball, now you're in trouble. So you better play ball. Speaking of which, this is an issue with me, besides the fact that the United States government literally funds terrorist organizations, is, people exaggerating about terms and then using those terms against you. Let me give you an example. Liberals think that Donald Trump is a Nazi, even though Donald Trump is pro-Israel, super Zionist, does everything he can possibly for Israel. They still think he's a Nazi, which doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. But the liberals don't care about what makes sense. They just keep calling Trump a Nazi anyway. I guess they see some parallels between him and the rise of Nazi Germany, although they're not that similar. But I guess that's what the left thinks. They're like, I see the similarities, so Trump's a Nazi. He's not, but I guess they can just call him that. I guess that's their First Amendment, whatever. Liberals now think Elon Musk is a Nazi. I mean, people in Germany think Elon Musk is a Nazi. Elon Musk is not a Nazi, but they keep calling him that. Ian Carroll is like a hippie podcaster who talked about Israel. I listened to the full Joe Rogan at this point. He talked about Israel like a little bit. They were talking about the CIA. They were talking about America. Ian was being very careful, and Ian, he was making sure to be very politically correct about it because he knows how it is. And I heard the whole podcast. I would say Israel is talked about less than 5% of the time. Maybe I'm missing something, but I felt like they talked about a million different topics, and Israel came up a few times because America and Israel and our intelligence communities are like joined at the hip. So, but they're calling Ian Carroll a Nazi now. They call Candace Owens a Nazi. The only one who self-identifies as a Nazi is Kanye West, and nobody, or Ye, and nobody seems to notice. But besides him, who actually identifies as that, these other people are not like Ian Carroll's not a Nazi. Candace is not a Nazi. Elon Musk is not a Nazi. Trump is not a Nazi. But there's multiple different organizations calling them that. So here's where it gets tricky. If you're just calling someone something, I mean, I don't know the rules of defamation. That's for the courts to decide. But for the most part, it's like you're allowed to falsely label somebody, sort of. Maybe you can get in trouble for it because you're just saying stuff. But if you're allowed to call, let's just say you call Elon Musk a Nazi, and then they pass a law that says that all Nazis must be investigated. Well, now the left can investigate Elon Musk because they falsely labeled him a Nazi. Now they can use that false label to go after him. They do this to Trump. They do this to Republicans. They did this after January 6th to try to go after more people. They always abuse terms, use terms, and then pass legislation with the terms that they abused. And then while all this is being done, it's actually the U.S. government who's funding the Azov Battalion, who actually has legitimate neo-Nazi connections. Your taxpayer dollars are funding that. But remember, that's not the big story. The big story is what Ian Carroll said on the podcast, or what Elon Musk did with his autism on stage because he's a goofball, and he's very awkward. That's the story, not the fact that your taxpayer dollars are funding literal neo-Nazis in Ukraine to some extent. That's not what they're going to crack down on. That's where your taxes are going. They're cracking down on Elon and Trump and Candace and Ian. It's the same thing. Someone had mentioned Glenn Greenwald does a good job on this topic, but he retweeted somebody who said, for years, the people who are protesting in defense of Palestinians and against the Israeli government to some extent, they've been labeled falsely pro-Hamas. Now, their false label can lead to real issues. They could get detained. They could get, ICE can come after them. They're gonna extend this on citizens if they haven't already, of course. But it's like the false label doesn't mean that much until it does. So you have to understand. And a lot of people don't understand this because they're so brainwashed by Zionist media that they can't even comprehend this. But there is a difference between Hamas and Palestinians. And if you don't think there are, you're going to try to genocide them because you're going to think, well, Hamas are terrorists and all the people there are terrorists, so they all deserve to die. Look when the last election was. It wasn't even, I believe, within the last decade. They haven't even gotten a chance to vote their way out of it. I'm sure there's kids there that are just getting killed and families there getting killed. Like if they could vote tomorrow, they'd vote for whoever would stop the war. I'm sure they would. They're like, oh, who's not Hamas? Who does Israel want here? I'm sure they'd put their name on a piece of paper, but they have no vote. They can't vote. They don't even have electricity right now. They're trying to kill all these people. So it's like the people that watch Fox News are like, no, you don't understand. You're an idiot. That would be like them saying that they could wipe America off the map because, we voted for Joe Biden, or they don't like, Clinton versus Trump. They don't like either party. So no matter, we can't vote our way out of certain topics. So everybody in America deserves to perish because of an election that we had. Like that's so insane that nowhere else in the world is this even remotely believable. But people are so brainwashed over Palestine that they literally think that every single person there supports Hamas or is Hamas, so they all deserve to die. Like that's the actual logic. So outside of what country you support, you could look at Israel and say October 7th was a horrible, horrible day. It absolutely was. The weirdest part about October 7th that Fox News doesn't seem very interested in and all these brainwashed boomers have never looked into is the Hannibal Directive angle of it, which Haaretz reported on, where Israel has it's called the Hannibal Directive, where they would rather basically friendly fire on their own people than allow for Hamas to take in, hostages. So they have something called the Hannibal Directive, where they literally will kill their own people along with the terrorists in order to prevent a hostage situation because they don't want them to have leverage over them. And Haaretz reported that happened. And the damage from a lot of the weaponry done and the damage done on that day, like people have been reporting on that for years, but it's being all swept under the rug because they just call you the most anti-Semitic person in the world if you even report on it. An Israeli publication reported on it, and then they got sanctioned by the government. So democracy, no, there's a democracy to agree with what the government does in Israel. If you don't, you get sanctioned. Like their most prestigious news organization is in trouble for reporting on the Hannibal Directive, which nobody seems to even notice. It's a horrible day. Regardless of what happened, it's a horrible day. Anybody that hand glides into Israel is a terrorist, and I wouldn't say otherwise. Although I do wonder how someone would hand glide. Like, they stopped missiles, but they couldn't stop a hand glider. Something seems a little off there, but of course you can't say it does because that's just hate speech. So let's just say nothing. Let's just not talk about it. With that being said, now you go to the other side, and it's like, you think every single person in that country has a part of that? Like, how dumb do you have to be to think that? In America, you have no say over who they fund in Syria. You probably have no idea what they're doing in Syria. Like, the U.S. taxpayer does. Just look at USAID. We're supposed to be one of the most prestigious, wealthiest, most democratic countries and free countries in the world. You could make a list of a million things, probably not a million, like 1,000 things that the U.S. government has funded that you didn't want. Sex changes of animals in foreign, like, this is your taxpayer dollars funding this stuff. You can't stop it. Operation Warp Speed, you couldn't vote your way out of it. 15 days to slow the spread, it wasn't on the ballot, and Hillary Clinton would have done it even worse. So they're obviously the freest, greatest country in the world, America. We can't vote our way out of certain foreign policy. We can't stop them from doing these things with our taxpayer dollars. We have virtually no say what they're doing. They told us, and this is, I would say, the most offensive angle of all this, they were supposed to release the Epstein files. And unless you're under a rock or your brain is literally a rock, you should know by now probably what the Epstein files are going to implicate and probably why they're not going to show you. Because if they showed you the Epstein files, our entire government would finally make sense to everybody outside of the brainwashed boomers who just can't fathom what's actually going on in our country. So they're not showing you. Instead of giving you the Epstein files, Pam Bondi is policing hate speech for one race, one religion, and one country that Jeffrey Epstein just so happened to be a part of, one racial group, that Jeffrey Epstein, if he were alive and doing what he was doing then, he would be using these terms and these laws and these executive orders to police hate against himself. He would probably be accusing everyone of being an anti-Semite. Oh, you say I'm working for a foreign country, that's anti-Semite. Oh, you're just coming after me and Ghislaine Maxwell because we're both this ethnicity, that's anti-Semitic. So it's like, not only are you not getting the Epstein files, you're getting hate speech laws that would benefit Jeffrey Epstein if you were walking around, that benefit George Soros, that George Soros and organizations have used thousands of times to shut down George Soros' opposition. They call you anti-Semitic because he's Jewish. This is, just Google George Soros anti-Semitism. You probably find 1,000 articles. United States State Department calling India anti-Semitic, governments calling people anti-Semitic because, how dare you just talk about George Soros? He's just a victim. You're not getting the Epstein files. You're getting hate speech laws that Epstein would have used. No one thought of that angle. It's just like so obvious. But Republican boomers that watch Fox are like, duh, we're going after the terrorists. We're going to get them any second now. It's like, really? You mean the same ones that your taxpayer dollars have funded over the last 20 years that are slaughtering Christians in the Middle East now? The rebel groups that your taxpayer dollars run? Yeah, you think they're going after them? No, dummies. They're going after people who protest the country that controls America. Sorry, that's what's going on. So it's just like so obvious, yet nobody seems to be able to figure that out. Every branch of government has to police this specific type of hate. Just so specific. Just one race, one religion, one country. Just so happens to be the biggest recipient of foreign aid. Just so happens to be. I'm sure that's just a total coincidence that they can get hundreds of billions of dollars, and now American citizens have a trouble even talking about it. And they're going to start with everything they can do to somebody who is not a citizen, because if you're not a citizen, you have less rights than Americans. If you're a citizen, there's already people that are not illegal immigrants or not even legal immigrants that don't have a green card that are being, there's a lot of pressure going on there. The Trump administration is basically trying to stay within the First Amendment rights as much as he can, even though he's kind of flirty on the lines, like as much as he could possibly do. It's like, okay, we can't shut down their speech, but what can we do? We can pull the funding. We can take the money away. We can harass them. We could have these organizations dox them. Like they're trying so hard to figure out every possible thing they can do so they can shut down opposition to the people who are protesting the country who gets the most foreign aid in the country that's killing tens of thousands of people. I don't know any other way to put it. Like, I look at the Ukraine and Russia war and I think tens or hundreds of thousands of Europeans are just getting killed. And I feel bad on both sides. It's like Ukrainians are getting killed, Russians are getting killed. Why are Ukrainians and Russians getting killed? In my opinion, because America established a Bolshevik Western puppet plant leader who became, turned Ukraine into a Western puppet state. And then Putin invaded, knowing what was going on and knowing the decades that came before. Not saying it's justified, but it's like that's the move he made. He's seen what the United States has done in other countries. And this is not, I'm not a Putin sympathizer, and I'm not anti-Ukraine. That they could say that about me, just perverting vocabulary in order to shut down my valid reporting. But it's like, if you're a country, like look at what America's done. We fund Libya. The leader gets killed, a slave trade appears. We've tried to take over Afghanistan. God knows what happened there with the poppy fields and everything. Trillions spent, not much progress. Iraq, overthrow the leader. Is Iraq better than it was 20, 30 years ago? Debatable, but probably not. Syria is absolutely not as good as it was 4 or 5 years ago. We funded terrorist organizations. They say that ISIS was there. It's like you could look up reports and see, like, here's some Google research for all the slow people out there, or the fast people that want to, beat the slow people in a race or something. Google, try to figure out which country ISIS apologized to. I've only seen one. Maybe there's others, but ISIS attacked a country by mistake and apologized. Go look up what country they apologized, because ISIS doesn't apologize to a lot of countries, but they did one country. They said, hey, sorry, we attacked you, according to a leader from that country. Look up who was nursing and helping Al-Qaeda soldiers in their hospitals. Like, the United States and our allies, we were directly or indirectly helping terror groups. With ISIS, I have a lot to say about that, but it's like, at bare minimum, what I can at least prove is that while ISIS is fighting Bashar al-Assad and our government will deny helping ISIS, we were funding terror organizations fighting Bashar al-Assad while ISIS was fighting Bashar al-Assad. So Bashar al-Assad's trying to beat ISIS, and then we're hitting him with another rebel group, which is roughly affiliated with Al-Qaeda. Like, we are that side. Now he's gone. They ran him out of the country, and now it's going to be a mess, and thousands upon tens of thousands of people are going to die. It's not a coincidence. This is not, whoa, didn't see that. They knew that was going to come. They don't care. They're going to take the land. They're going to kill the people there. It's a trend. Overall, I know where this is going. I know where it's been going. I've been talking about this for 5, 6, 7 years. I don't particularly care about, foreigners protesting in America. Just to wrap it up, then I'll read some questions. However, it's either foreigners can protest in America or they can't. If foreigners only can't protest one foreign country and one race and one religion, then let's just be honest about this country. Let's change the flags and let's change the name of this country. Ukraine became Ukraine. When the Muslims take over, Constantinople became Istanbul. I think it's time we just change our country's name, because if foreigners can't protest any country, then we have a real country. If foreigners only have to pledge loyalty to one foreign country, then we don't have a country. Let's change the name. Let's change the flag. United States of Israel. We can get a new flag, and then we could just be honest with our people and just be like, we have a new country that revolves around Israel, the same way Ukraine has to revolve around America because we control it and fund it. So, like, I'm all for the transparency. I just don't like this whole passive aggressive, like, fake thing. Trump says it's pro-terrorist, yet Trump knows that the U.S. government has literally funded terrorists, and he's talked about it. Trump says that it's anti-Semitic, and Trump passes anti-Semitism hate speech laws that Trump himself constantly violates. So Trump is an anti-Semite. Trump commits anti-Semitism every 2 weeks, according to the laws he passes. And he's either too fake or too dumb or too compromised to realize it, because he just keeps passing hate speech rules that he breaks regularly. He constantly breaks them because everybody breaks them, because just talking now is anti-Semitic. So anything you say about anything could be anti-Semitism with these laws. So Trump says that. And then he says it's anti-American. How's it anti-American to protest a foreign country? Well, it's anti-American because we fund that country. It's anti-American because we give them hundreds of billions of dollars, and they get free healthcare, and we get just destroyed infrastructure. It's anti-American because we're funding all these operations. It would be like saying Trump is anti-American because he said something, 10 years ago. He said Syria is a mess and America's making a mistake. Does that make Trump anti-American because he criticizes America? Is Trump and everything that Trump's doing with you with Palestine and Israel is the same thing they're doing to Trump and Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard and all these people over Russia and Ukraine? Everything the Democrats are doing, saying you're pro-Russia, you're anti-Ukraine, you're a foreign agent, you're anti-American, you hate our country, you're everything they're accusing Trump of, that's what he's doing to the Palestinian side in this thing. He's saying, if you do this, you're working with the worst people, you're a terrorist, you're anti-American. If they're anti-American, Trump's anti-American too, because Trump criticizes America all the time and our foreign policy. Trump basically got elected because he criticizes our foreign policy. People in America want to be able to vote their way out of foreign policy. That doesn't make you a terrorist. And when it comes to Israel and Palestine, it's like, I'm just going to be honest. They want to kill everybody in Palestine. That's what they want to do. They want to kill every person there, kill the women, kill the children, throw them out, send them to Jordan, send them to Egypt, get them out of there so Trump can build some sort of like transvestite paradise with bearded ladies and a bunch of Trump casinos on the graves of dead bodies. And then when people like Theo Von are disgusted by it, Theo Von's like, how in the world would anyone want to go to a place that's just built on all these dead bodies? They'll just call Theo Von an anti-Semite because he's smart enough to figure out what's going on. It's like, it's the truth. Like, I don't know what else to say. I'm not making justification for what Hamas did. I don't give a crap about Hamas. I have nothing I don't care about them. I don't, a foreign government or a foreign military group, like, screw them. I don't care. I'm just calling it like I see it, but I'm not allowed to call it like I see it. I'm only allowed in America to be like, you know what? Israel's the greatest ally of all time. Give them all our money. Let them just do whatever they want. Let's invade Syria so Christians get killed, and then we'll pretend like it's Candace Owens' fault. Like, there's nothing you could really do. It's just like, okay, so because Hamas did that, you're just gonna kill as many people as you want, and it's totally justified because they're all in on it. No other country in other place is that true, but here it is because that's what we've been told on the TV. It's like, that's the world we live in. The biggest amount of civilians killed, you're not allowed to think it's gross. I would think it's gross if it were the other way around, which when they did do something to Israel, I did think it was gross. I think any sort of violence and murder and all this stuff is gross. But now, because we live in the United States of Israel, I'm not allowed to say that I think what they're doing is not good. I'm not allowed to say that, those people don't deserve to die. Like, I have to say that, or else I'm going to be accused by the completely fraudulent Trump administration, and they're going to accuse you of sympathizing with terrorists. I don't sympathize with terrorists. That's what people in government do. They not only sympathize with terrorists, they fund terrorists, okay? Tulsi Gabbard, once again, Tulsi Gabbard passed Stop Arming Terrorists Act. They didn't pass it, and then they called Tulsi Gabbard a terrorist for realizing that the United States was funding terrorists. You get it? Everything's inversion with the government. And this is why we have the First Amendment, because anybody that gets power is just going to try to stop criticism. Don't talk about banking. Don't talk about media. Oh, don't reference that Bible verse. That's anti-Semitism. Don't say that people have dual loyalty to two countries, even though it's obviously true in some cases. That's anti-Semitism. Big donor funding it, but don't say they're funding it because that's anti-Semitism. Trump says it, but that's anti-Semitism. War going on. If you disagree with it, it's anti-Semitism. Let's just be honest about it. Why doesn't Trump just take the First Amendment and wipe his ass with it? Let's just get it over with. Let's just get it over with. Let's rewrite it and say, First Amendment's good for everything except for Israel's and one race and one religion, because they need special laws that say that nobody could talk about them, because simply just speaking the truth about anything is just hate speech and we can't have it. Might as well just do that, because that's where this is going. They're starting with people that don't have green cards, but it's not a principled, measured act. If everyone that was a foreigner couldn't protest at all, then it would be fair, even though it would still be kind of a little bit of a First Amendment thing. But that's not what they're doing. And for the record, by the way, they also haven't been doing this in conservative media. They blacklist, smear, and censor everybody who talks about this stuff. They frame you with these labels and they write articles about you trying to give you these labels. So now the media is working against you and they're like, oh, we're just doing articles calling you anti-Semitic for speaking the truth about a few things. Oh, you're an anti-Semite. They're trying to take your job away. They're trying to take your money. They're trying to get you in trouble. They're trying to get people to hate you. And then they're trying to get advertisers not to work with you, so you go bankrupt. And while they're doing all that, Trump's government's passing all these hate speech laws to help these people do it to you. So it's like, yeah, you have the First Amendment to speak. You're just going to have the entire Zionist media network working against you, lying about you, smearing you, calling you names without being able to talk about what you're doing. Now a bunch of them are just weirdly like really concerned with the Epstein files. People like James Lindsay and such, they're like, I mean, the Epstein files might tell us something about a foreign country, but that's not a big deal. It's like the cover, like while the government covers up the Epstein files, you have all the frauds and all the liars and all the con artists and all the controlled ops in Republican media, like trying to like frame it some other way. They're, the Epstein files are a big deal, but I mean, Andrew Tate, it's like, bro, I don't care what you think about Andrew Tate. Give the guy a fair day in trial and let the courts decide and let them show evidence, not based off of what you said on Twitter. But besides that, it's like, that's not equivalent to the Epstein situation. You know, I'm not like, even like the OJ Simpson case, it was like bigger than the Andrew Tate case, but it's like, it's bigger in the sense of like everyone's paying attention to it because it's interesting, but it's not as important as the Epstein situation. Like find a foreign leader, close your eyes, throw a dart at a dartboard, and probably that foreign leader has a picture with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It's like this guy was compromising like every famous political figure, and now they all mysteriously want to sell our country out to a foreign country, but it's just hate speech if you figure it out. And all the fake opposition people in the media are just like so appalled that people are talking about it. And, you know, all the neocons and all the war hawks and all the ultra Zionist news reporters that said, throw out Bashir al-Assad, get rid of Bashir al-Assad, Bashir al-Assad's a Busher, get rid of Bashir al-Assad. Now Bashir al-Assad's gone. Christians are getting slaughtered. Everybody saw this coming. And now these scumbags have the audacity to be like, oh, Christians are getting slaughtered and the anti-Semites and Candace Owens aren't talking about it. You frauds. I can't speak for Candace because I don't really watch her show that much, but I'm just saying, like, I'm pretty sure she's talked about this because anybody that's semi-reasonable and good at reporting for years has been like, the neocons are trying to overthrow Bashir al-Assad and get Christian killed. In fact, Candace tweeted that last year or a couple months ago, she had a video before Bashir al-Assad left and was like, yo, as soon as they get rid of him, Christians are going to die. And the same people that are like, get rid of them, now that the Christians are getting slaughtered, they're trying to act like it wasn't their foreign policy that led to this moment. And they're trying to frame and invert all the people that tried to talk about it. I'm sorry, but I don't think the biggest frauds and the biggest liars and the biggest inverters and the people who support foreign wars and the people who lie in the media constantly, I'm sorry, but I don't think that some of them need special hate speech words to protect them based on their race, their religion, or the foreign country that we just can't vote our way out of. It doesn't matter who's in office. The money keeps flowing. It's the unelected country. It's so annoying. So it's like they're going to start and they're going to deport people who are legally in this country. And then they're going to start cracking down on the universities. Then they're going to crack down on the students. Just keep in mind, it's not because they've pushed transgenderism in America for 50 years. It's not because they destroyed our youth. It's not because they push music that's telling people to kill each other. Like, they're not doing this because America's falling apart. America will still fall apart, just like Syria will. And someone will just majestically benefit from it all because they don't care if other people fall apart. So it's like, this isn't being done for American interests. Why? What? There's a million things going on at universities that's wrong. What's the one thing they're policing? It's for a different country. I'm sorry. It's not principled. It's not, oh, this makes so much sense. It either would make sense for everyone or it would make sense for no one. And the most annoying thing about all this, besides everything I just mentioned, is the Republicans that cry about DEI and cry about what the left does. Everything that they cry about the left doing, whether it's for Ukraine or for Black people, it's what they're doing for Jewish people and for Israel. It's the same exact stuff. These special rules, special policing, special laws, rigging, financial situations, pulling the money. If they don't do this for Israel, it's like the same things that liberals for Black Americans. That's what Republicans are doing. And the funny, I mean, I wouldn't say it's funny because it's really not, but it's just like the irony of the situation is after 20, 30 years of Democrats doing that, Democrats will then say racism versus Republicans will be like, well, no, it's not. But at the same time, your strategy doesn't work. You've done this DI for 30 years and it hasn't created racial unity. It's just annoyed everybody because nobody in America comes to America to be treated like a second-class citizen and not be able to fly a plane because they're not like a transgender, female pilot with a penis on their face. I'm just being exaggerating, but you get what I'm saying? It's like everybody in America just wants the best people to work the best jobs and they want, things to thrive and succeed. DEI didn't work, and now we're seeing nobody cares. Like, people don't care about these edgy topics anymore because they got beaten over the head with it for 2 years. Yet the Republicans are like, Israel, 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 Israel. Oh yeah, but that's going to work, right? When the left did it for black people, it didn't work. But when you do it for Israel and Jewish Americans, it's totally going to work, right? When you guys exaggerate, when you guys push hate speech laws, when you say you can't say they own banks and media companies, when you can't say they influence politicians, when you can't say that they, historically their ethnicity killed Jesus, even though that's what the Bible said. I don't care what. You could say it's the Romans if you want. You could have a Bible study discussion about it. I don't really care, who's saying what. But the anti-Semitism hate speech laws care because they mention Jesus in it, right? That'll make Christians feel really good. Every Christian outside of the brainwashed Zionist Schofield Bible reading boomers, every Christian is like appalled by this that's actually paying attention. But these boomers are like, I don't know anything. I went to church the other day and the dude starts reading from a fake book in the Bible, like the Maccabee Bible. It's not even a book in the real Bible. And he's like just making up stuff. Like, I'm like, I get why people are brainwashed now. Like, I'm never going to that church again. But it's like, if I went to that church for 30 years, I'd be brainwashed too. It's like the dude is making up fake scripture, quoting things that aren't even in the real Bible, convincing a bunch of Christians that their entire life revolves around worshiping a group of people that rejects Christ. It's like, it's not what the Bible says, nor is that Christian, nor is that even a religion. Like, you've watered down your religion and just made up like a false satanic one where you're worshiping people instead of the Lord. And of all people, you're worshiping people who literally reject Christ and hate Christ. Not all of them, but I'm just saying. It's like, no wonder why everybody's so confused. So, long story short, the Trump administration, I knew this was going to be the one issue with them. I know this is what you can't vote your way out of. But they're moving even, like, I thought they would do a few more things for America, but it's like, as the stock market tanks, they just do everything for Israel. Bobby Kennedy gets in the health department. He can't do a single thing right. He's got to do something for Israel. He's got to police hate speech and hate for a foreign country because that's his job. Like, I knew that the Trump administration was ultra Zionist and they're bankrolled by Zionists for the most part. So I knew this was going to be the one thing that he did a little too much on. I just didn't know he was going to move at warp speed. And the one guy on Fox News or whatever, his name is like Leo Terrell. He's like Trump's little minion or whatever. Leo Terrell. He was talking about the anti-Semitism laws, and there's a clip of him. He's like, we're working at warp speed in this administration. It's like, hey, dumbass, you would think that you wouldn't use the word warp speed after Trump just Operation Warp Speed, a pharmaceutical socialist scam 5 years ago. But they're like clueless. Like, we're working at warp speed to fight Oh, we know you're working at warp speed. That's your little code now. When you guys sell out America and destroy our country, you just say warp speed. Oh, we're working at warp. We know, bro. Stock market's tanking, but you're working at warp speed for Israel. Our cities are still dangerous, but you're working at warp speed for Israel. Our ICE agents aren't even capable or well equipped enough to deport every illegal out of this country, but you're going to start deporting critics of Israel who haven't committed a single crime. We know, bro. I mean, is this the country that, even if you're the most pro-Israel, pro-America person ever, is this the country you want? Is this the administration you want? I expected this from Trump. I guess he's just working at warp speed. I was hoping he would do things for America, do things for Israel, do things for America, do things for Israel. I wasn't expecting Israel. Here's a bone, Israel. I didn't expect that, but maybe that's my fault. Now I'll know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what he actually does for this country and how he benefits it. But I'm not really interested in supporting an administration that is just drooling at the mouth to do everything for a foreign country. You can have an ally, you can give them money, you can go fight your wars, but stop trying to stop people from talking about it. And just to wrap it up before I read some comments, it's a very dangerous precedent to just exaggerate about people, like, and then pass a law for that word. Like, in the last week, I've literally watched on Twitter, I watched them call a meme page, Declaration of Memes is the name of the page. He posted a Candace Owens quote, and people started calling him a Nazi. Now, Elon Musk is a Nazi. Trump's a Nazi. They said Ian Carroll was a Nazi. Now a meme page is a Nazi for sharing a Candace Owens quote. Now what? Are they going to pass legislation and start going after them because they falsely labeled them? This is the same thing. Like, the amount of people that support Palestine versus the amount of people that are terrorists is a different story. And I can't stand most of the liberals protesting because they're annoying, obnoxious, and wrong about almost everything. But with that being said, it's like, this is where they're going with this. It's the same thing they did during, I mean, I'm sorry for being long-winded about this, but I have so much to say. It's the same thing they did during the Bush administration. They passed the Patriot Act and told you it was for foreign terrorists, and then they ended up using it against American citizens, and then they ended up funding and bankrolling indirectly those same terrorists again. Like, the same Al-Qaeda offshoots are the ones that they were bankrolling in Syria. And it's like, do you know how offensive that should be to Americans? They told you this terrorist organization knocked down towers, killed thousands of people, including some of my people's family. My friends' family members have died in 9/11. And then they're going to tell you they're going overseas to fight Al-Qaeda. And then they go and fight Saddam Hussein. And then they fight Gaddafi. And then they end up bankrolling Al-Qaeda offshoots in Syria. And now they've taken over the country and they're slaughtering Christians. Americans and patriots should be absolutely disgusted by this. Disgusted. Yet they're not. Yet they think the terrorists are a bunch of idiots protesting at a college campus, not the people who bankrolled the terrorists and not the people who elevated the terrorists and forced them into power. And according to reports this week, kept them into power. Those people are never getting in trouble. It's going to be the plebs and the peasants that protest too much. And, you know, liberals are idiots. So it's hard to ever justify anything they're doing because they're stupid and they're wrong. And they're eventually going to do something. Like, I don't trust any liberal to do anything at this point. So it's like, I'm not even fully following everything they're doing. I just know that the GOP is exaggerating about it in order to pass infringement laws the same way that George Bush did during the Patriot Act. You know, the Patriot Act worked against Americans, and that same government ended up bankrolling the terrorists they told you they were fighting. That's real. That's true. It's not, when I was younger, that was a conspiracy theory. Now, I could, if I wanted to, and I might this week because I'm passionate about this, I could show you 10 articles proving that we bankrolled those terrorist organizations. Yet we still have the Patriot Act. Yet we still have this is the new Patriot Act. It's basically like, we're going to start a war that kills tens of thousands of kids, and we're going to steal the land. And if you disagree with it, you're a terrorist. That's what they're doing. Doesn't matter if you're pro-Israel. Doesn't matter if you're skeptical. If you're an American citizen, your loyalty is for America. An American citizen should not have to declare loyalty to Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, or Russia. An American citizen should be able to say, you know what? I like Ukraine and I don't really like Russia. An American citizen should say, you know what? I like Russia better than Ukraine. An American citizen should be able to say, you know what? I like Israel more than I like Palestine. I don't care about Palestine. And an American citizen should say, I sympathize with the Palestinian people getting slaughtered, and I'm not really a fan of Israel's government. I think they're taking advantage of us. An American citizen has loyalty to America and should have loyalty to America. In America, we're not America anymore. Everything in America revolves around pledge loyalty to Israel. John Fetterman for Israel. Trump for Israel. Nancy Pelosi for Israel. They're all for it. You know, this country demands more loyalty for Israel than it does for its own country. And this idea that you have to be joined at the hip with Israel is a completely new concept created in the last 20 to 50 years. And in the last 20 to 50 years, America has been absolutely falling apart because any nation will fall apart if you don't care about yourselves. In their Knesset, they have laws that say that you're not allowed to have two passports if you want to serve in their government. They want loyalty to Israel. Smart. In America, you can have two passports and you get called anti-Semitic if you notice somebody doesn't have loyalty to our country. Even though a foreign spy got sent home on Trump's donors' jets, that's how compromised or in on it Donald Trump is. But the boomers don't want to realize, because instead of voting for Trump and being like, he's the best option like me, all the lazy boomers that destroyed America just sit there and say, I don't have to do anything now because Donald Trump will wipe my butt. And it's like, yeah, that's the lazy, stupid, watch Maria Bartiromo ideology that has led us to this place in the first place. Like, oh, he'll do everything right. He's not. He's totally sold out on this topic, and he's working at warp speed against American interests. Like, it doesn't, you can support Israel. You could love Israel. You could want to fund Israel. You can want to beat up Hamas. You even have the right to say you want to destroy all of Palestine in America. I mean, it's a little messed up, but as an American citizen, your loyalty doesn't have to be to Palestine. Your loyalty should be to America. But it doesn't go both ways. Like, if I'm just like, you know what? Because I'll just tell you my thoughts. I'm not even going to have to be sugarcoated today. When it comes to Ukraine and Russia, I don't care about either country. Instinctually, I love everybody in the world and I love all cultures in their own way, but I don't really have loyalty to them. So I look at it and I say, I like Ukrainians. I think they're being taken advantage of, and I think their country's being controlled by us. I look at Russia and I see a cold and in some cases mean, but a very strong Christian for lack of a better term, Caucasian nation that hasn't been completely compromised and destroyed by the Western world. And, I think that our leadership wants to invade and, take over. They see Russia and China as a huge threat because they're major countries that we don't control. But if I look at every country that we're allies with, they're absolutely a joke. Like, I think Germany is a way bigger joke than Russia. I don't have any loyalty to Germany or Russia. This is not pro-Putin. I'm just an American citizen looking at it. All of our allies are completely pathetic. London's getting completely destroyed. UK isn't even really a country anymore. Pretty much all of the West is being conquered and outbred. And then you go to Russia, a country where that's not happening, and they're the problem. It's like, yeah, obviously I could see the trick there. When it comes to Israel and Palestine, I see a very complex issue. It's very complex, and I see a really sick and sad war. With that being said, I don't think that every woman and child was a part of it. I think what happened, and I mean, what probably did happen, was the Palestinians were there first. The Israelis came to escape war, persecution, and said, hey, we're just going to stay here. We're going to take this part of the land. And a lot of Palestinians were like, okay, cool. That's fine. And then the Nakba happened. And then since then, Israel's just been taking more and more land and treating them terribly. Like, I'm sorry, that's just the truth. I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's going to be hard to get along. And Palestinians have done some stuff wrong too. But Israelis just keep taking more land, and they're like, we're not trying to take the land. We're not trying to take the land. We're just trying to exist. We're just trying to exist. And then eventually the floodgates open and one tragedy happens, and they're like, you know what? Actually, we want all the land. We want to just, throw you all out and take the land. And it's like, I knew 6 years ago they wanted the land. So it's like they always wanted the land. Once they got justification for taking the land, they're telling so, I'm not Palestinian, so it's hard for me to really completely sympathize with everything they're going through. But my opinion as an American citizen doesn't have to be Israel did everything great ever and everybody's anti-Semitic. It's like the USS Liberty happened. That wasn't great. The Levant affair happened. That wasn't great. And, the Jeffrey Epstein files are never going to get released. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with it. So it's like, I don't know. If I was getting called anti-Palestinian for reporting media, if Palestinian people owned media companies and bankrolled both sides of politics, and I pointed it out and they called me anti-Palestinian, I'd probably be more annoyed with Palestine. But that doesn't happen to me in this country. And I've said things about Palestine before, but the major two donors in both parties, or at least two of the top two, that are really it's like, this is the reality I live in. It's like, I just get called anti-Semitic all the time for just doing reporting. It's like talking about Jeffrey Epstein's anti-Semitic, talking about George Soros is anti-Semitic, talking about the Adelson family bankrolling Trump is anti-Semitic, being pro-First Amendment's anti-Semitic, reading my Bible's anti-Semitic, reading verses in the Bible are anti-Semitic, so it's like that. Like, I just keep getting called these words while the government keeps passing speech laws, while the government bankrolls terrorists, while they lie about it, while they call people like Tulsi Gabbard a terrorist for calling out the fact that they're the ones funding terrorists. What am I supposed to think? I don't know. My loyalty is not to Palestine, Israel, America, Ukraine or Russia. My loyalty is to America. So it's just like, I guess now I have to have full-fledged loyalty to Israel, or else I'm not allowed in this country anymore. This is like the changing of the guards. We'll see where it goes, but that's my rough thoughts on it today. I'm going to make a more in-depth, I would say, a more in-depth report on this with articles and stuff that make more sense. This was just my kind of my loose chat about it. Someone said calling people boomers is anti-Semitic. Well, I don't know. I guess. I don't know. And no, that's anti-boomer medic. Someone said too much truth. Be careful, bro. Be careful of what? Be careful of being a coward all the time. I don't like, what do you want me to walk around as a slave in my own country like I did during COVID, or they try to make it what it is? I don't know what to tell you. They've called me anti-Semitic 1,000 times already. I noticed they're passing speech laws. They said it's anti-Semitic. I said the First Amendment should stand against hate speech rules for one country. They called it anti-Semitic. I interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy. They called me anti-Semitic. They've been trying to destroy my business for years now. I don't like, what do you want me to do? Be a pussy like you are? You want me to be a bitch like you? You want me to live like a coward like you? You understand what I'm saying? It's like, what do you want me to do? You want me to be you? No, I'm me. You're you. You're the scared one. You're the one walking around with your tail between your legs like a pussy. I don't want to be you. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Someone said, I thought for sure you were Palestinian. Why? I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Russian. I'm not Ukrainian, but I can look at what's going on and have an opinion about it. Someone said I'm Irish and English boomer. That's interesting. Someone said America first always. Someone said opposing war gets you labeled anti-Semitic too. Yeah. All right. I'm only going to read a few. I don't really see any good comments, just a bunch of people being weird. But someone said, LM said on Facebook, he said, guess what? Germany is also owned by the Zionists. And in Germany, you're not allowed to criticize Israel. And they passed the law that if you want to apply for German citizenship, you have to recognize Israel. I'm sure they did. It's most of the West. I mean, I haven't looked into that, but I know in Germany, you can go in prison. Like your anti-Semitism in Germany can get you sent to jail. So, that's what they want for America. That's what they want. That's what a lot of people want. That's what they're pushing for. And that's what Trump's not necessarily trying to do it, but he's getting as close as you could possibly get. And then, it's going to be a battle in the courts. But right now, we're not Germany. We're not England. So they can't go after people for speech like they can in those other countries. America's great for that. Like the First Amendment is really a powerful thing. So, we'll see how it goes. But I do think that this country is unique in that, although they're trying really hard, it's not working. And that's why they're freaking out. Like on Twitter, like everyone's talking about it and everybody's freaking out. And it's like, does anybody want to have a real conversation about this or no? We all just going to like freak out about it. I don't know. Stephen Campbell said, hey man, keep up the great work. Thank you. Appreciate it. Do I regret voting for Trump? No, no. To me, it's just like, I don't know. The left just destroys the country from within. Like they just destroy America. So I still think Trump is better, but the jury's really out. I got to see how he does in the next 4 years. I don't know. I don't really know what to do. It's like Trump is in my best interest in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways he's not. So I don't live in a country where it's like one good vote or one bad vote. I'm very aware of what the pros and cons of both sides. It's just with the left, I get almost nothing out of it. With the right, there is some benefit, but the right always tries to find a way to make their benefit irrelevant. Like during the first 3 years of Trump, it was like kind of okay. And then he did the whole COVID thing. And it's like now every benefit that there was for Trump was just wiped away by all the mistakes he made. So that's what this presidency is going to be about. It's like, when you're outside the system, it's easier to talk about the system. And I think when Trump, like when Biden's in there, it's easy for Trump to be like, Biden's doing this and that. And it's like, I know, like Biden, it was opening the border. I guess, I mean, to be honest, I guess I don't regret voting for Trump, but I slightly underestimated how insane all the Zionists are in his cabinet. Like I figured like, I knew Kristi Noem was a puppet, but I'm like, she's just going to run Department of Homeland Security for the most part. I knew, RFK Jr. is compromised on that topic, but, he's just going to do the health department. I was, I can't say I for sure thought that because there's always the chance that they sell you out. But I guess even though I had a low bar, I'm even surprised with how blatantly psychotic they are. Like RFK didn't do anything for his health department, yet he's screaming about hate speech. Kristi Noem, the DHS, the ICE, they're using that to go after anti-Semite. Like, you know what I'm saying? I knew they were going to police anti-Semitism. I guess I just underestimated how insanely anti-American and fraudulent the ultra Zionists are that Trump hired. Like, I thought they would do a lot for America and then do a few things for Israel. I didn't understand that. I didn't think they were just going to just go all out for Israel and just like not really do that much. But I mean, I guess they're doing some things with ICE and such. So I would say, do I regret voting? No. Do I still want to see what Trump does for the next 4 years? Yes. Do I hope he does well? Absolutely. Am I inspired right now? If the election were tomorrow, would I vote for Trump? No, I would sit home. But there's gonna be moments where I feel certain ways. So I'm not trying to let my emotions get the best of me. But if the election were tomorrow, I would sit it out. At this point, I don't really care. But I don't know what to really do about it, because the left and right just keep tossing us back like a beanbag, and most people can't figure it out. So it's like, either I need to do well for myself, or I just need to stop talking about stuff, because if this country is going to get conquered, then it's like, what's the point of me talking about it? Like, what are they going to do to me? What's going to happen to me? I'm like, if I don't live in a country that's smart enough to figure all this stuff out, then I might as well just get a new career and a new hobby. Although I'm sure they'll always hate me for talking about this so consistently for 5 years. I don't really know. I mean, it's like, part of me enjoys being able to speak my mind, and I'm grateful, and I feel like I have purpose in life. Also, part of me wants to do something else, because it's like, I don't like just talking about problems that I can't fix. And if I think I could fix a problem, if I think I can improve the country, then I'll do it. At the same time, like if it gets to the point where people can't figure this out, then it's like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of just talking to people and not registering? I can't really tell what direction it's going in. So someone said Palestinians hate Americans. They hate, yeah, but I agree. I don't disagree that I wouldn't say all Palestinians hate Americans, but Palestine have had tens of thousands of people killed from American taxpayer dollars. They know we're funding the people killing them. So I'm sure they like Americans who know what's going on, and they don't like the people that realize that it's happening. So if you lived in a country that was getting bankrolled by another country, and they were using that money to hurt you, would you like that country? Like, I wouldn't expect them to like the country funding the death of their people. You understand what I'm saying? Like, at the same time, no offense, I'm not trying to like bring them to America or anything. I'm just trying to be able to talk about it. I'm not asking to bring them all here as refugees. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a good idea now, because they probably do hate this country, because this country's been killing them for decades now. Adrian said, how pleased would the people that must not be named be if America takes Canada as a state, considering the amount of refugees there? I don't know what the country that must not be named. I don't know what they would think about that. I haven't even thought about what they would think about America taking Canada. I'm sure Canada's controllable either way. Like, they're such a weak country, like, culturally. I mean, there's great culture in Canada, but doesn't seem to be very manly or on point with stuff. So I don't know. I'm just like, now that there's hate speech laws, I just have new words. Like, since the people that must not be named, the country that must not be named, it's like Voldemort, where you just can't talk about it because everything's hate speech. It's like, if the left is trying to police what you say about black people, then you just say, like, what does the left say? They say, like, people of color, minorities. They just start using different words because they're afraid. They're like, the chosen ones, the greats. you gotta pick a new terminology. But I don't know. I think when you talk about black stuff, most people don't care unless you hit a really emotional talking point, and then they freak out at you, like George Floyd. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like not every black person, obviously, I'm not trying to stereotype, but if like you talk about George Floyd, it's like people just like wake up and see it and hate you. So it's like, there's just certain topics that they freak out about. I don't know. It's just basically like, don't go viral. If you go viral on black Twitter and you say something like that, then you're going to get in trouble or something. I don't know. Someone said, how have people not figured out it's a show? They watch the wrong people and they believe the wrong people. But the thing is, at a certain point, like, how are you so dumb to believe someone obviously lying to you? I don't know. Like, dude, if you watched like Laura Ingraham and Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, like, if you watch people like that, you don't know what's going on. Like, these are not high level news analysts telling you the truth. These are like propaganda, It's like nonstop propaganda, unchallenged propaganda. And then anytime someone challenges them, they don't want to debate. There's people who've made a living debating liberals. Like, you don't have to debate anybody if you don't want to. It's up to you. But in general, it's like, they love debating. Like, they're on stage debating. They're at college campuses debating. There's dozens of people on the right that are way more honest than them that they never want to debate. Like, say Candace Owens, right? Say what you want about Candace. She's good at debating. She wants to talk about Syria. She's wanted to talk about Russia and Ukraine. She wants to talk about Israel and Palestine. She's down to, like, if she's so bad and she's so wrong and she's so hateful, why don't these people like Ben Shapiro or Mark Levin or any of these characters, why don't they want to sit down and talk to Candace Owens and prove how bad she is and prove how wrong she is? Because they can't. Their entire business model is deception, run away, cry hate, like, they're not intellectually capable and they're not honest enough to win a debate on these topics. They rely on talking points that don't make any sense. I've gone over them in the past, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's like, I don't listen to fake media because it just makes me feel dumber. But when I do, it's like I could pick apart their talking points within 5 seconds. Like, I watched one time, I think it was Alan Dershowitz or somebody, he was saying like, well, they voted for Hamas, so they're kind of in on it. And it's like, Google when the last Hamas election was. It wasn't even in the last decade at this point. Okay, how many people voted for Hamas in that election? It was not that big of a majority landslide. Like, they won, but not by very much. Then it's like, did Netanyahu and others prop them up or want them there? Like, there's a lot of articles proving that, but whatever. It's like, so that's the logic that they're giving to people on stations like Fox News and such. Like, these people are just over the top. They're saying the same 5 talking points over and over and over, and it's repeating in the mind of the Republican boomer brain, and they think they know what they're talking about. But it's like, if you talk to them for 5 seconds, you'd win a debate every time because they have the same 5 talking points that don't make any sense. It's like, you think they all deserve to get bombed because they voted 15 years ago in an election? You can't even win your own elections in America. Joe Biden won in 2020, and you can't control your elections, but you expect a 15-year-old in Palestine and a mother to control their elections? Someone said it was in 2006. It's almost 20 years ago now. Someone said it was 43%. Yeah, it's not a huge landslide by any stretch of the imagination. So it's like, what about the under 40% of people who didn't vote for Hamas? Can they live, or no? Do they deserve to get bombed because there's an election in 2006? Like, this is the level of talking point on Fox News. I'm done interacting with brainwashed people because they creep me out. Like, I remember when Trump was running against DeSantis, all the Trump supporters were acting like zombies. Like, I had my own friends freaking out at me because, like, DeSantis, George Bush, and all I was saying was, like, when Trump and DeSantis say something, my baseline is not who said it so I can defend it or agree with it. I know my own stuff. I've done this job for almost 10 years now. So it's like, if DeSantis says something that's literally true, and then Trump just lies about it, I'm not asking you to vote for DeSantis. I'm just like, DeSantis just told the truth about the vaccine and Trump just lied about it. And people are like, oh, George Bush. And I was like, dude, it's crazy. Like, people are so brainwashed. This is the thing with Trump. It's like, in some ways, he's the best president of our lifetime. In many ways, he's the worst. He's the best because he woke a lot of people up. He's the best because he challenges some of the war policy. He's the best because he's just innovative and interesting, and he's more transparent, and he's doing things that are interesting, like Doge. So it's like, in many ways, Trump is the best president ever. In other ways, he's the worst thing for the Republican Party because all the boomer brains and all the the culture just revolves around like thinking he's so amazing. So it's like, when Trump does what Mitt Romney does, everybody would be like, Mitt Romney's a neocon. But if Trump does it, they're just like, maybe there's a reason. Maybe he's playing ball. Like, it's like, maybe the reason is he took $100 million from a mega donor the same way Mitt Romney takes money. Like, that is the reason that Trump's doing things. He takes money from donors too, and he does what they want. But with Trump, everybody likes him so much personally that they try to justify why he's doing what he's doing. So it's like, I'm very interested in what he does these next 4 years. But if he doesn't really fix America that much, then it's like, in my opinion, we got to get somebody new on the right that is not so likable that people are willing to like hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable. Because with like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, a lot of people are like, yo, they're not giving us the Epstein files. But then, some people are like, but they're trying their best. But I actually like Kash Patel. He seems like a really cool guy. Pam Bondi's whatever, but like Kash does seem cool. At the same time, we do want to see the Epstein files. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but like, I don't know that they're ever going to give it to us. So having such a likable group of people, it almost turns like it makes people a fan of the Republican Party. It's like, oh, the Republican Party's our friends now. Don't you think if the elites really wanted to control you, that they couldn't do it if nobody believed either side? Like, they have to give you someone that's believable in order to keep the game going. There has to be some sort of left versus right dynamic, or, us versus the terrorist dynamic. They said this in the 2000s. They said everyone who doesn't support George Bush's war is a terrorist. It wasn't true then, and it's not true now. It's just harder to explain now because the left wing is so dumb now that they're just so dumb. So it's like, at least during the 2000s, like, there was like credible opposition. Now there's no credible opposition, and Trump's just opening the floodgates because he knows that the left is just so dumbed down by the Bolsheviks. It's just like, it's just crazy. I got in trouble 5 years ago. If you go back and look at my tweets, I mean, I was getting in trouble for these tweets where I said, there is no like America first right versus like the left. Like, the left and the right have totally been compromised or controlled. I said it's really the Bolsheviks versus the Zionists. Like, you can find tweets of mine like 5 years ago. Like, I knew this way before a lot of people did, and nobody knew what I was talking about. So I just stopped talking about it because it's like, I would make videos, get 30,000 views. I'd talk about this. Everybody would get mad at me. So I was like, it's not that I stopped talking about it because I didn't. But in general, it's like the left is Bolshevik, the right is Zionist. It's like you got to pick one side. You either side with the Zionist firsters who prioritize Israel over everything and do some things for America, but really they're just doing it for Israel for the most part. And then on the left, you have the Bolsheviks who just are destroying everything internally, and they're right about like 3 things, but they're wrong about 1,000 things. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't side with the Bolsheviks. I side with the right more, but I'm not under the illusion that it's Donald Trump and the freedom fighters versus the left. It's like the left and the right are kind of working together in some ways, but it's hard to explain to people because everyone thinks it's like Donald Trump and the right versus the Bolsheviks. It's like, what people don't understand on the right is when you don't have full loyalty to America and you prioritize another country, you don't mind if America suffers and your ideology suffers and your religion suffers and your people suffer, because if your people and your religion and your ideology and your politics are suffering, but it's bolstering and benefiting a foreign nation, there's a lot of people who want that to happen. They're like, well, yeah, I mean, if Syria falls apart, like, yeah, I mean, it sucks for the people there, but at least we get the land. At least Iran doesn't have somewhere to go. At least we get rid of Russia. Like, we're doing all these things not in our own interest. So it's like, 4 years of Trump, we flop. 4 years of Biden, our country looks terrible. There's no voting your way out of this. You just got to vote for the best candidate. But I guess the point is that, like, a lot of Republicans need to figure out what's going on. If they think it's Trump versus the bad guys, then we're going to have Trump and his ilk run the country for 20 years. I think it is what it is, though. Someone said, I know the majority of Americans don't travel, but when you do, they might be surprised on how little your country's actions in this world are liked. Most of the world can't stand us now because we also, our government got taken over, and we pump out anti-America propaganda into the world to make countries hate us. Like, it's really bad. In the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, all the propaganda from America was pro-American propaganda. It was like liberty-based propaganda. You look at some of the old propaganda, it's pro-America propaganda. We want to brainwash the whole world to like us. In this country, and now most of the propaganda is anti-American propaganda. Why would a country put out propaganda against its own country? Like, that's how cooked America is recently. So I'm sure a lot of the world doesn't like us because we've reversed our propaganda to put out anti-American propaganda to make other countries hate us. And then when we have a good president or a good leader or something better than it was, then they reverse and get mad at it. So I don't know what year. I would love to do that research and try to figure out what year American propaganda went from being pro-America to anti-America. But we'll figure it out. Appreciate you guys. I'm going to end this video here. This is the point that I want to make because, like, it's going to get misconstrued, but I don't really care at this point. I don't like foreign terrorist organizations that are true terrorists or domestic terrorist organizations. Like true terrorists doing evil things, I want no part of. I don't like any of the gangs doing stuff, people doing horrific crimes. Like I'm against all that. What people don't understand though is that the word terrorist is not used accurately pretty much ever by the government, and they literally fund and support rebel groups who are known terrorists in other countries. They never get in trouble for it. It's like a pharmaceutical company. They could purposely kill millions of people. They never get in trouble for it. The COVID scams and scandals, nobody got in trouble for it. Epstein files, nobody got in trouble for it. The most egregious crimes in modern history, no one gets in trouble for. But then they want to brainwash you on the TV and be like, you know who the real terrorists are and the terrorist supporters? It's the people on colleges supporting the people that we're funding money against. It's like not the actual organizations. They don't want to go after the actual organizations because most of the time they're either bankrolling or propping up those organizations because it's like a WWE show. It's like in order to have a WWE show, everybody can't be friends. If everybody's friends, nobody wants to watch the show. You have to see the good guy and the bad guy. It's like one of them's good, one of them's bad. It's all fake, but it's like they need the characters. So, I'm not saying this is always the case because it's not. There are some genuinely bad people in the world, but a lot of the times the good guy, bad guy cop thing they're doing where it's like, we got to go fight the terrorists. They're propping these organizations up to knock them down and justify their invasion into a country or some sort of regime change. Like that's just the obvious truth. So people need to understand this. And if they don't, it is what it is. But it's like they're not going to go after the terrorist organizations because then they'd have to go after themselves. They're going to go after anybody who stands in the way of the organizations that they're funding. And if you think that that sounds far-fetched or you don't understand it, all you have to do is look at Tulsi Gabbard being labeled an actual terrorist and being put on a terrorist watch list of some sort when she was simply just calling out certain foreign policy, and they still tried to classify her or in some ways align her with terrorists for saying, I think you guys are funding terrorists. And they're like, you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist. You don't support Ukraine. You're a terrorist. That's what they're going to do. And it's going to sound good when the people that are pro-Israel are doing it to the people that support Palestine. But as soon as that gets used against you, you're going to be like, wait, not me. Well, you're technically a terrorist because you were at January 6th. Well, you're technically a terrorist because you support Donald Trump and people did this at an event and you know this guy and this guy knows you. So now you're kind of affiliated with terrorist organizations. What are you talking about? That's not a terror event. It's like, bro, what does the word mean and who does it mean to? Like, look at the definition of the word anti-Semitism. What you think anti-Semitism means and the government word they're policing are two different things. All the Republicans passing these laws are the ones that are violating the laws every week. They can't even follow their own rules because they're so broad. But they're not going to persecute themselves for breaking the law. They're going to say, oh, no, I'm not anti-Semitic. They are, not me. They are. Like, you understand what I'm saying? It's like they're not going to, I could point out 5 times that Tom Cotton, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Ron DeSantis have broken the anti-Semitism hate speech law. They're not going to get in trouble for it. But the second that you disagree with something that they're doing in their foreign policy or their funding, now all of a sudden that word means something that they didn't think it meant 5 minutes ago. Like that's how they're going to use it. So when it comes to the Israel-Palestine stuff, I'm not a Palestinian activist. I'm not a Palestinian protester. I'm not Palestinian. I've never been there, never been to the Middle East, to be honest. But this is just what I see. This is my analysis and this is my report. And, if people want to think that this seems so out of left field, I know some people on Facebook are like, did somebody hack your page? I don't understand it. I've been talking about this since 2017. You can find videos of me talking about Tulsi Gabbard in Syria and what's going on there now. In 2017, I've been talking about this for almost a decade now. Almost a decade. It's been consistent. And what you think they're doing and what they're doing are two different things. What they say they're doing and what they actually write in the bill are two different things. And I get, I understand, it's easier to just, go along with it because then it's less work. I get it. Everybody's stressed out. Everybody's, busy. But, when people will be like, they're just doing this. That's what they told you they're doing on Fox News. Did you read the actual legislation? Nobody reads the legislation because, let's be honest, who wants to read legislation? Who wants to sit there and read through a 50-page bill? Nobody's going to do that. And they know you're not going to do that. So they'll just say the most extreme thing on the television. And you're like, that's what they're doing, Anomaly. Who hacked your page? And it's like, have you read the bill? No. Guess who has read the bill? Guess who does read the legislation? Me. Do you know what it says? Not what you think it says. It always says more. It always goes way further. That's what it's doing. And they've even multiple times said, yeah, we're going to deport people who are not citizens here. But if you are a citizen here and you are committing anti-Semitism on a college campus, you're in trouble too. It's like, yeah, we might not be able to deport you. We might not be able to arrest you. I mean, we're going to try, but we can't. But what they can do is pull funding from a school and make the school call you up and say, hey, don't write that op-ed anymore. You got to write op-eds in favor of this country. Imagine if you're at school and they're like, you can't make an op-ed that says that Russia was not the aggressor. I mean, they're probably trying to do that too, but you get what I'm saying? Like, this, it's not a free country. It's like you're only allowed to write op-eds that are in support of American foreign country. You're not allowed to write op-eds that criticize where America's aid is going. You have to support Ukraine. You have to support Israel. Okay, then let's just be honest and just stop saying that this is like some free country. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. That's all I'm asking. It's like, if this is the game we're going to play, let's just stop saying, oh, we're just doing it for foreigners. We're just doing it for this guy. No, you're not. You're not doing it now. You haven't been doing it for 5. Like, let's just be real about it and then get it out of the way. And then we can make a new constitution. We can make new laws. We can make new hate speech exceptions. And then we can be transparent about it. And then everybody can know. It's like on YouTube and Facebook, they used to punish your page and nobody knew why they were doing it. It's like, I don't support your rules, but you don't even have rules. Like, you could say anything violates your rules without even having to tell me why. That's why Facebook and YouTube are so annoying. It's like, at least if I know your stupid rules, I could follow your stupid rules or use a different website to get around your rules. If you don't have rules and they expand and contract every 2 seconds, then it's like, you understand what I'm saying? It's like, I can't possibly follow rules that don't exist. So in America, we have to be really honest about what we can and can't do. And what Trump and the Republicans are doing is they're just screaming terrorist. They're just screaming anti-Semite, and they're just screaming anti-American, where if Trump sat down with Candace Owens and debated this, he would lose the debate. You know what I'm saying? If Ben Shapiro, if Mark Levin, if anybody supporting this stuff sat down with somebody that was critical of it, they would get absolutely embarrassed in a debate and everybody would see it. That's why they don't debate. They just scream terrorist, they just scream racist or anti-Semite, and they scream anti-American. They can't function their words together because that's all they know. They're like liberals. They're like, hate, anti-American. Well, I could call you anti-American for not supporting Ukraine, but that doesn't make sense. That's a cop-out. It's like, oh, you got to support Ukraine to be American? That's what Democrats say, and Republicans say the same thing. With that being said, I'm out, folks. God bless you. Appreciate y'all. See how this goes. But what would be nice would be, I think, next week, American politicians focusing on America. But I think they're passing a spending bill. According to Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, they're passing a spending bill that actually passes a lot of the things they complain about in USAID and raises the debt ceiling $2 trillion. So it's like, not only are they not doing very much for our country, but this is all I'll say. And then I'll move on because I could really talk about this for too long. If you're pro-Israel, if you're super, you love everything that Trump's doing, here's my question. Are you ever in desire of logging into Twitter and seeing American politicians just focus on America? Or do you think it's normal for Rick Scott to talk about daylight savings time and have a massive Israeli flag behind him and no American flag? Would you ever see someone in Israel talk with a huge American flag behind them and not an Israeli flag? Of course not. They'd have an Israeli flag behind them and they wouldn't have a massive American flag. Like, only Republican politicians think that this is normal. It's really weird. It's like Democrats with Ukraine, but it's like if you just like scroll down any of these Republicans' Twitter, it's like everything's Israel all the time. It's like, at what point, even if you're pro-Israel, are you like, hey, can we focus on America for 2 months? Like, is there ever a moment where we can actually use our resources for us, or is our resources always for them? Our speech policing is always for them. Our college campuses are only for that. Like, think about all the messed up stuff college campuses have done. And Republicans are only acting on it because of Israel. The donors are switching to Trump because of Israel. People like Michael Rappaport went from the most anti-Trump haters to now the most pro-Trump people because of Israel. It's like everything revolves around them. And then the college can't, like, are they still doing all their other stuff? Like, there was no pro-America angle to make, colleges better. they're not really concerned with that. That's not who pays their bills. So at what point do Republicans realize that and ask them to just focus on our country for a couple months? Maybe they don't, because the war's going on right now and it's such a big moment in the Middle Eastern history. Like, the truth is, for the last 20, 30 years, our foreign policy, I would say, is not only aligned with Israel, it's basically for Israel. So, all these neocons that you haven't liked, and George Bush and the Clintons or whatever, like, it's all been leading to this moment. There's a Clinton email from the WikiLeaks thing where Clinton said in her emails that she knew if Bashar al-Assad fell, it would be good for Israel. Go look that up. She was like, if he leaves or gets thrown out or killed or whatever, it's going to really benefit Israel. That's like our whole Middle Eastern policy. It's like, what's good for them at the expense of whatever it costs. Is what it is, but what I'm saying is the Republicans are not going to stop talking about Israel, because the entire American government for the last 30 years has been focused on this moment in the Middle East. Everything else they've been doing in the Middle East is leading up to this moment. So I doubt they're going to just stop talking about it and focus on America, because it's like left and right and neocons and neoliberals, they've all been waiting for this moment. It's here. Donald Trump's in. So it's like, it's a pivotal moment in world and U.S. history, or world and Middle Eastern history. And, it's probably going to be the center point of politics for the next couple of years. But I don't know. Hopefully that we can rebuild a few airports and get something out of it, or at least the stock market could go back up. But if not, I don't know. I'm prepared for anything. We could get Make America Great Again Trump. We're definitely going to get Make Israel Great Again Trump. And hopefully we just don't get Operation Warp Speed Trump. Because if we get Operation Warp Speed Trump, then we're in trouble. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Let me know what you think in the comments. God bless you guys. Have a beautiful week. And I'll be back very, very soon. Someone said to Afflicted Area said, Jeffrey Sachs. This is a good question. I want to read real quick. Jeffrey Sachs is a communist, but he's been adopted by MAGA. Hold on one second. I want to read it real quick. But he's been adopted by MAGA as a mascot because the right's the communist disguise. Are you talking about Jeffrey Sachs? I don't know that I wouldn't call him a mascot for MAGA, because I don't think that anybody really thinks of him as a mascot. I think that's an exaggeration. The thing is, when you talk about foreign policy, like, if you're being honest, I think people look at Jeffrey Sachs and be like, he's being very honest there. I don't think any Republicans looking at Jeffrey Sachs and being like, communism's great. So, if say Jeffrey Sachs talks, Mark Levin talks, Tucker Carlson talks, Trump talks, Putin talks, Kim Jong-un talks, Zelensky talks, is what they're saying true? Is what they're saying false? If what they're saying is true and nobody seems to be able to debate it, then, it is what it is. Like, I think Jeffrey Sachs is really interesting to listen to, and he's a very honest person with foreign policy. With that being said, is domestic policy, I'm not voting for him. I don't care, So I think you're just exaggerating to try to delegitimize what he's saying about foreign policy, because Tucker Carlson does an interview with Jeffrey Sachs. Jeffrey Sachs speaks a lot of truth. And then you're like, he's a communist. He's a mascot. He's a mascot. You like someone who doesn't know what you're talking about. So you just use words to like confuse people. But, I like, at the end of the day, regardless of who he is, who he's worked for, when he speaks, it's like, is he telling the truth? Okay, interesting. Is he lying? It's a lie. But, I don't know a single person in MAGA that actually cares about Jeffrey Sachs that much. Like, they like some clips, he says some real stuff, but nobody's like head over heels running into communism because of Jeffrey Sachs. I think a lot of conservatives listen to podcasts for info. And then anytime somebody gets on a podcast like Ian Carroll or Jeffrey Sachs that people don't want on podcasts, people freak out and have to they can't allow a free flow of information. So they're like, Ian Carroll, he's crazy. Jeffrey Sachs, a communist. It's like everyone, the podcasting world, people talk to everybody, and some people rise the ranks and some people don't. So I just feel like people that freak out about podcasts, Tucker Carlson has interviewed like Kevin Spacey. That's kind of weird. He interviewed the weird guy who's in jail who did the crypto scam. Like, that was weird. So I really, to be honest, I don't know a single person that really cares that much. Like, people like Tucker, but I don't know anyone that's like, oh, he interviewed, whatever his name is in jail, the crypto guy. I'm a huge fan of the crypto guy. Like, I think most people just listen to the podcast, get the info, and move on. It's the people who don't want certain people to be on podcasts that just freak out about them being on a podcast. And they're like, yeah, MAGA's communist now. It's like, no, you know, MAGA's head over heels for Jeffrey Sachs because of it's like, I don't think very many people even know who Jeffrey Sachs is. And the ones who do, they like what he says, not necessarily his entire, you know, history of politics in America, you know, but whatever. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one. And I'll be back soon. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk.